defendants. Judge Scott McAfee has just ruled Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis can remain on the case. So let's get right to our senior investigative correspondent, Aaron Koturski, because Aaron, the way the judge laid this out here, there are multiple options to work with.
There are, because he did not totally clear the district attorney here in Fulton County from the whiff of impropriety, but he said Donald Trump and some of his co-defendants failed to show that there was an actual conflict of interest posed by her relationship with another member of the prosecution team, Nathan Wade, whom she hired to help run the case. But he did say there was an appearance of impropriety. And so while disqualification was not necessary, the judge did give options. The decision says the district attorney may choose to step aside along with the entirety of her office, or she can let Nathan Wade go and the case can continue. So the ball is now in Fani Willis's court to decide how to proceed.
All right, Aaron, stand by. Let's bring in Olivia Rubin, our investigative reporter. And Olivia, I know you've been following this closely. Of course, the appearance of impropriety, this is exactly what Trump's attorneys and the attorneys of the other co-defendants were trying to lay out.
It's exactly what Donald Trump's attorney, Steve Sadow, and many of the other defense attorneys told the judge should be enough to remove her from the case. They said that there is enough in Georgia law that should mean that an appearance of a conflict should get her kicked off. But that is exactly what the DA argued against, telling the judge immediately after we saw all of those, high-stakes evidentiary hearings, saying that there is no case law that just an appearance of conflict should lead to a disqualification, and urged the judge really in this, I think it was a 17-page filing, saying there must be an actual conflict of interest. And as we just heard from Aaron, the judge ultimately found that there was no actual conflict of interest, that the trips that they took together, that the money that was paid by Nathan Wade's card, remember Fani Willis said she paid that back in cash, that she had no financial benefit, and that should dispel any idea that she had a financial stake in keeping the case going. So when the judge heard that, it seems that seemed to dispel any notion that she had any sort of personal stake here. And I think it's likely that we're going to hear from the DA that this is a win for her case. I think it's not, the worst outcome, that Nathan Wade, which is likely the option that they're going to choose, is going to have to step aside, because the case will continue forward. Fani Willis can continue forward, and it does not have to get tied up now by this outside body having to pick an entirely new team to come in and pick up the case, probably delaying it indefinitely. So that has been avoided today if they take the option of Nathan Wade.
And of course, the attorneys for Trump and the co-defendants were actually seeking to disqualify Willis. So now we have these options to work with. Let's bring in Chris Timmons, our ABC News legal contributor, former Georgia prosecutor. And Chris, so where does Fani Willis go from here in making this decision?
I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. I think Nathan Wade, resigns. I think he files some sort of document that says that in the best interest of the case, he's not moving forward with the case. He's gonna step down. Now, Fani Willis is somebody who's a little bit of a maverick. She's somebody who kind of forges her own path. So there is a slight possibility that she decides to challenge this ruling. But if she's smart, and she is very smart, she'll let Nathan Wade step aside and she'll continue with the rest of the office. They've got a deep bench in Fulton County. They've got plenty of prosecutors who are capable of stepping into his shoes. She could bring in another special prosecutor, but this looks like a win for the state, just as Olivia said, Whit.
All right, so let's bring in Brian Buckmeyer, our legal contributor and trial attorney. And Brian, just looking at this from the Trump and the co-defendants' perspective, what does the perception of all this do? And is there more opportunity for delay, which is what they want?
Yeah, well, Whit, I think there is a good perception here that while it ultimately is a win for the prosecution here, the judge did give them a bit of an olive branch to say the appearance of impropriety or conflict did seem to exist. And it might create an opportunity for them to appeal and say, you know what? The judge made an incorrect stance of applying the wrong standard, the standard of being actual conflict rather than the appearance of it. And they can ask a higher court to evaluate this case and take the judge's ultimate finding of an appearance of conflict and say that should have been the ruling, take his understanding of what the evidence was and come to a different conclusion, and that could create a further delay.
Brian, thank you so much. Let's go back to Aaron Katersky because, Aaron, I know you're sort of digging into this this decision from the judge here. And what more did the judge say about this appearance of impropriety?
Yeah, even though Fani Willis is allowed to stay on the case if she gets rid of Nathan Wade as a special prosecutor, the decision is really unkind to her. The judge writing that an outsider could reasonably think that the district attorney is not exercising her independent professional judgment totally free of any compromising influences. And also left unresolved, the judge said, is the issue of when her romantic relationship with Nathan Wade started. The defense attorneys believed she hired her boyfriend, that they were dating before she brought Wade onto the prosecution team. She denied that pretty forcefully, but still the judge's decision said neither side was able to conclusively establish a preponderance of the evidence when the relationship evolved into a romantic one. However, the decision says an odor of mendacity remains, meaning he seems to doubt whether Fani Willis and Nathan Wade were being fully truthful in their testimony.
All right, Aaron Katersky, thank you. Let's go back to Olivia Rubin. Olivia, I understand you're getting more reaction to this.
We are. I'm just texting right now with a couple sources down there, Whit, and there's one on the defense side who is already starting to hint at an appeal for this ruling. The initial reaction is saying they feel that the judge, quote, bent over backwards to protect the DA with this ruling. Of course, not necessarily any evidence of that in the actual ruling, but that is the sentiment on the side of the defendants here who fought for 2 months as part of this effort to get the district attorney disqualified, and already hinting at an appeal, saying we will need to wait and see what the appellate court chooses to decide, which of course will kick off another sort of entire legal issue as part of this effort. And as I'm sure Chris Timmons will tell you, you know, there is a question about what happens to the case on appeal. Does it get stayed again, which could feed right back into Donald Trump's goal of this case, which is to delay. So already talk of an appeal on the ground in Georgia just moments after this ruling hit, Whit.
Olivia, thanks so much. Let's bring in John Santucci, our executive editorial producer. And John, as Olivia pointed to there, of course, the timing is the big question here. We are in an election year.
Yep.
Former President Donald Trump is now the Republican nominee, and all 4 of these criminal cases now dealing with delays, possibly.
Yeah, you really can't make this storyline up if you tried, Whit. It's remarkable. Every case Donald Trump faces right now, the news just yesterday, the prosecutors in Manhattan are now looking for a 30-day delay in that case. That was supposed to begin later this month on March 25th. But now in Fulton County, and Whit, I know Olivia has spoken to several sources and defense attorneys. I've spoken to attorneys for former President Donald Trump. They are reading this ruling right now, and I can tell you, Whit, that as Olivia just reported, the same for Team Trump. They are looking at ways to appeal this case because, look, if Nathan Wade steps aside, as this ruling from Judge McAfee says, the case can go on. That is not what Team Trump or any of the other 19 total defendants wanted here. They want this to go away. So how do they get this to go away? They have an appeal. Look at another case right now, just for our viewers at home, and stay with me. If we head to the federal cases right now, look at what Team Trump has been successful doing in the January 6th efforts to overturn the election case brought by Special Counsel Jack Smith. They have delayed that case by appealing it to the U.S. Supreme Court. So here in Georgia, obviously we're at a state level. The goal for Team Trump, get this to the Georgia State Court of Appeals, get another delay, because at the moment, though there is no trial date set in stone in Georgia, Whit, the proposed date is August. That is terribly close for Team Trump to November.
John Santucci, our thanks to you and the entire team on this. Again, the breaking news right now, a Georgia judge ruling DA Fani Willis can remain on that case out of Georgia. For now, we do want to return you to regular programming. For some people in some parts of the country, that's Good Morning America. Of course, our coverage continues on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. And I'll be right back with the entire team for World News Tonight. For now, I'm Whit Johnson in New York. Have a great day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Watching ABC News Live's continuing coverage after the judge in the election interference case against former President Trump in Georgia has ruled DA Fani Willis must either choose to step aside along with her entire office, or the special prosecutor she had a romantic relationship with can withdraw from that case. For months, former President Trump and some of his co-defendants had pushed to disqualify Willis over allegations she benefited financially from that romantic relationship with Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade. The judge found there was no actual conflict of interest, but cited the need to avoid the appearance of impropriety. I want to bring in senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky, who's outside the courthouse. Aaron, how significant is this decision?
Well, it's significant because the judge has said that Fani Willis probably did not use the greatest judgment when she began a romantic relationship with one of the prosecutors. He said that an outsider could reasonably question her professional judgment, and it's going to force her to make some changes to her prosecution team if she wants to remain on the case. Either, the judge said, she and her whole team can go, or Nathan Wade, the special prosecutor whom she dated for a time, has to go. So there are going to be some changes. But ultimately, this is not what former President Trump and some of his co-defendants wanted. They wanted Willis disqualified. They wanted the case dismissed. And the judge wrote, Diane, that there has not been a showing that the defendants' due process rights have been violated or that the issues involved prejudice the defendants in any way, nor is disqualification of a constitutional officer necessary when there is a less drastic option available, namely that Nathan Wade could simply resign. Now, it's going to be up to Fani Willis to decide what to do from here, but in all likelihood, she would accept Nathan Wade's resignation and try to move forward with the case herself and a new member of the team.
And I want to bring in former Georgia prosecutor Chris Timmons. Chris, I know you've worked with Fani Willis before. What do you make of the judge's decision here?
I think it's a smart decision by the judge. I think it's a good ruling on his behalf because it puts the ball back in the district attorney's court. It tells them you have a choice. Fani Willis, you can resign. You can take your entire office with you, or you can have Nathan Wade resign, one or the other. So it kind of puts the ball in their court. It doesn't force him to make the ultimate decision on keeping the entire district attorney's office out by disqualifying them. It lets them make to choose. I think it's a smart decision. It's a well-reasoned opinion. It's a very long opinion. Importantly for the state, he did not find an actual conflict of interest, just an appearance of impropriety. However, some of the language is stern towards the district attorney's office. I think, as Aaron said earlier, an odor of mendacity is not something that you want to see in an opinion about yourself, particularly one that's going to be read nationwide. So it's a little bit of a win for the DA's office. I think they're going to declare it a win. They get to stay on the case. The case gets to move forward.
And I want to go to investigative reporter Olivia Rubin. Olivia, what could this mean for the case against Trump and his co-defendants now?
Well, I think in the sort of immediate here and now, the DA's office is likely to see this as a win because Fani Willis wanted to stay on this case. The entire office wanted to stay on this case. That was their goal. So I think, as tough as it might be to let one prosecutor go, it's still a huge win for them today. So I think moving forward, we're going to see them start to, work with that decision. But like we've started to hear off the ground is that we're already hearing word of, talks of an appeal. So the question is, does this now get caught up in an appeal? And for those that have watched Donald Trump in his other legal cases, it's not ever really the ruling that gets caught, that gets the case tripped up for him. It's the stalling on the appeal. Think of the case in Washington, D.C. He lost his request to be granted presidential immunity and have the case tossed out, but the case is stalled while he is appealing that up to the Supreme Court. And so now there is a question if it goes before Election Day. So the question becomes, could that same sort of, plan get underway in Georgia, where they have lost their effort to have Fulton County DA Fani Willis thrown off the case, but can they stall enough on appeal? And I think that is going to be what we are looking for now in Georgia, to see how much can they trip it up. Because remember, the DA has asked for an August 5th trial date that has not been granted, but we will try to see if she is able to get this in before the 2020 election.
And our executive editorial producer, John Santucci, is with me now in studio. Yeah. John, Trump's team here really wanted Fani Willis forced off this case or the indictment dismissed altogether. So what does this ruling mean for Team Trump? How big of a blow is this?
It's a bit of a blow because here's the reality, right? The goal for Team Trump is to delay the case. So if Fani Willis wants to fight this, right, if she wants to keep Nathan Wade, then they get their win. If I was Fani Willis, get rid of Nathan Wade, keep going. And that's probably, as Olivia and others are hearing, it's probably what they're going to end up doing. That is a major blow for Team Trump. Because look, here's the reality. At the moment, the DA has proposed a trial date to go in August. That's right after the Republican convention, before the November elections. Could they get it done all in time? Not sure. But the reality is Donald Trump's whole legal calendar has gotten so complicated in just the last 24 hours, right? Look at what happened in New York. You have a 30-day delay on that case proposed by the prosecutors, not the defense team. They want 90 days. Prosecutors are even saying, hey, we need more time. We found some new evidence. We don't have a date in Florida. We're waiting for the Supreme Court, which is going to hear the arguments next month about the efforts to delay the election overturning case by the special counsel. So this one now, which I got to be honest with you, many people figured, you know, if it was going to be one way or another, maybe it was going to go more throw everybody off in some ways. So this gives them an exit ramp for the DA's office. It is not a good day for Donald Trump's legal team. I can tell you from already speaking to one of the attorneys involved in this case, Diane, they are reading this thoroughly. They're looking at how to appeal, and you better believe that's going to happen fast.
And I want to bring that point to our legal contributor, Brian Buckmeyer. Brian, what does an appeal look like? What does that process look like in this case and for that timeline?
Well, typically, Diane, there are two types of appeals. The common one that we see is after a conviction. But what I think Donald Trump's attorneys are going to be looking at is what's called an interlocutory appeal. That's an appeal before the case is done, which would, again, feed into this idea of delay. The only issue I see with an interlocutory appeal is it's an exception to the rule. We typically ask defendants to wait till after the case is done. The other issue I see here is when you get that type of appeal, there are pretty much three standards to ask for one. The controlling question of law is something in dispute. There's a substantial ground for a difference of opinion, whether to use actual conflict or the appearance of it. But this, I think, is the issue for Donald Trump and his team, that an interlocutory appeal, if successful, wouldn't materially advance the ultimate termination of the case. Having Fani Willis and her team off this case wouldn't dismiss the allegations or the charges against him outright. It'd only stop or delay the process until another DA is found. So I don't think he has a strong ground for a pausing appeal in the middle of this case. He might have to wait till afterwards.
Chris, could this set a precedent in Georgia?
I think so. I mean, I think the judge did a great job explaining, you know, what the law is here and finding that sometimes an appearance of impropriety is going to be enough. I think getting back to Brian's point on an appeal, one of the very important things is to compare and contrast this order with the order that he issued 2 days ago. The order on 2 days ago that kicked out the 6 counts said in a footnote that he would allow a certificate of immediate review, meaning that he would let an appeal go forward. That language is not in this order, meaning that the judge is sort of tipping his cap, Diane, that he's not going to allow an appeal of his particular order. For the appeal to go forward, both the judge and the Court of Appeals have to agree that this issue is appealable. The judge, by leaving that language out in this order, seems to be indicating that he would not allow an appeal to go forward. Now, that's not absolute. That's just sort of reading the tea leaves here, but that's something to watch out for.
So, Olivia, to John's point, you know, obviously Trump's legal team would like this whole indictment thrown out, but their other strategy in this case and all of their cases is to delay, particularly to push all of these trial dates past the election. So how does this all factor into the timeline here?
Well, I think something that's been a little misconstrued during this case is the idea that nothing else was going on while this 2-month disqualification effort was underway. And yes, it certainly sucked up a lot of the oxygen. It sucked up a lot of sort of the hearing time. The judge was not hearing things on other issues, but he was on this. So the question is going to be, how much did it set it back? Can they get it in for the August 5th trial date? Did they lose any time?
All right, Aaron Katursky, John Santucci, Olivia Rubin, Brian Buckmeyer, and Chris Timmons. Thank you all. We'll be right back with more of the day's top stories. Stay with us.
Whenever news breaks,
we are here in Israel, a nation at war after that brutal surprise attack by Hamas.
On the ground in Ukraine, reporting from Lewiston, Maine.
The scene of a horrific mass shooting.
ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
From the scene of that deadly missile strike in Dnipro, Ukraine.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey.
In rolling fork, this tornado tore through this little town.
From the most devastating disaster in Hawaii.
From Charleston, South Carolina, on the 2024 campaign trail.
In Iceland. Let's go.
Traveling with the president in Mexico City.